Hello and welcome back to Easy-ish English, the podcast that helps you learn English in a fast, simple, and easy way. In this episode, you will listen to a real story with many ideas about life, growth, and people. The language is slow and simple. During the story, you will hear many useful words. I will explain those words in easy English, so you can learn their meaning right away. You do not need a dictionary because you will understand everything just by listening. Now, before you begin, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. It really helps us make more lessons like this. Now, let's begin our journey together. One cold morning, I walked out of the office where I had worked for 5 years. My hands were trembling. Trembling means they were shaking because of stress or emotion. My thoughts were scattered. Scattered means they were not organized or easy to control. I had just lost my job. My company closed without any warning. I had no plan and no clear direction. Direction means a goal or a path to follow. The street was full of people, but I felt completely isolated. Isolated means I felt alone. I felt separated from others. I sat on a bench near the bus stop. Cars rushed past me. It means they moved quickly. People walked fast and they seemed to have a purpose, a goal. I felt deeply confused. I was unable to think clearly or make a decision. I was scared too. I was afraid. While I sat there, I took a deep breath. I tried to focus on the present. I tried to pay attention to the current moment, not the past or future. I whispered, "This is not the end. This is just the beginning." Saying this made me feel slightly calmer. Slightly means a little bit, just a little bit. So I felt a little bit better. As I sat on the bench, an old woman stopped and looked at me. Her smile was warm and reassuring. It made me feel safe and comforted. That's what reassuring means. She asked softly if I was all right. Softly means gently and quietly. I told her I had lost my job and did not know what to do. She nodded slowly. She moved her head up and down to show understanding. That's nodding. She said, "My dear, I once lost everything too. But that loss became an opportunity. It became a chance for something new." She sat beside me and shared her story. Years ago, she had lost her home and work. At first, she cried every night. Tears came from her eyes because she was sad. Later, she decided to rebuild her life. That means she created it again after losing everything. She learned new skills. She opened a small bakery. She said it was difficult, but it was worth the effort. It means the hard work brought good results. Her words encouraged me. They gave me hope and confidence. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook. I decided to make a personal commitment. Commitment means a serious promise. So I made a furious promise to myself. I made a personal commitment. I wrote, I will not surrender. I will not give up, even if things become difficult. I decided that every week I would attempt one new experience. Attempt means to try to do something different. New experiences help us grow. They help us develop and improve as people. I looked around my small apartment and felt grateful. Grateful means thankful. So I felt thankful and grateful for what I had. That night, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude means a strong feeling of thanks. I told myself that tomorrow I would begin with one simple change. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Earlier means before the normal time. For example, if I usually wake up at 8 and today I wake up at 7, that is earlier. The sky was light and the air was cool. I made a cup of tea and sat by the window. I wanted to start my plan immediately. Immediately means without waiting. I was ready to try something new. My first goal was to read in the park for 30 minutes. A goal means something you want to do or achieve. Reading was easy, but doing it outside felt unfamiliar. Unfamiliar means not usual or not something I often do. So I walked to a small park near my house. I found a quiet bench under a tree. The air felt refreshing. Refreshing means it made me feel awake and full of energy. I opened my book and started to read. As I read, I began to notice many small things around me. To notice means to see or hear something and become aware of it. So, I noticed that birds were singing in the trees. I noticed that a woman was walking her dog. I noticed that children were playing and laughing. I also noticed the sound of the wind moving through the leaves. I felt curious about everything I could see. And curious means wanting to know more, wanting to learn more. When I returned home, I felt proud. I felt happy about what I had done. It was a small action, but it was meaningful. It was important. It was full of purpose. I wrote in my notebook that I had completed my first task. A task is a piece of work or an activity you finish. So, this task was a small start, but it showed me that change had begun. One afternoon, I decided to visit an animal shelter. An animal shelter is a place where lost or homeless animals are cared for. People go there to help and spend time with the animals. I wanted to do something useful and learn something new. I wanted to do something helpful and good for others. When I arrived, a woman named Anna welcomed me. She was a volunteer. A volunteer is someone who works and helps people or animals without getting paid. Anna explained how the shelter worked and asked if I wanted to help feed the dogs. Feed means to give food to someone or something. I felt a little hesitant. Hesitant means unsure. I was slow to make a decision. I was unsure. I was hesitant. I had never done this before, and I was afraid I might do something wrong. Soon I met a small brown dog named Leo. He was very gentle. Gentle means soft, kind, and not aggressive. I sat on the ground next to him and gave him some food. As I fed him, he slowly came closer and rested his head on my leg. I felt a warm and comforting feeling. Comforting means something that makes you feel safe and relaxed. At that moment, at that comforting moment, I understood how important small acts of care can be. During a short break, I spoke with Anna about the animals. She told me many of them had been abandoned. To be abandoned means left alone without care or support. So, most of the animals had been abandoned. Her stories made me feel sad. I wanted to do more to help. By the end of the afternoon, I felt proud and happy. I felt pleased about what I had done. Weeks passed. The days came and went, one after another. I woke up, did small things, and watched time move. I continued my small experiments. I wanted to try things and see what would happen. Each small action was like a small test. Experiment means trying new ideas or activities to learn from them. Each activity built my confidence. I started to believe that I could do things I was afraid of before. I felt happy when I tried something new. I learned that confidence grows gradually. It does not happen fast. It happens step by step, with time and practice. Life was slowly getting better. But then something unexpected happened. One morning, I received a phone call from my landlord. The landlord is the person who owns the place you rent. He told me that the building was being sold, and I had 1 month to leave. The news felt like a setback. setback is a problem that stops or delays progress. I sat on the floor of my apartment. I felt overwhelmed. I was filled with too many emotions at once. I had worked hard to build a routine. Now it was falling apart. I felt uncertain about the future. That means I was not sure what was going to happen. For a few days, I was sad and angry. I stopped going to the animal shelter and did not talk to my new friends. But one evening, I remembered something the old woman had told me. Every problem is also a chance. Every problem is also an opportunity, a new possibility. Maybe losing my home was a chance to make a bigger change. I started looking for a new apartment. The process was difficult and frustrating. Frustrating means it made me feel annoyed and impatient. Many places were too expensive. Some places were too far from work. Finally, I found a small room in a shared house. Shared means used by more than one person. I was nervous about living with strangers. Strangers are people you do not know. But I decided to try it. On my first night there, I met one of my housemates. Housemate means a person who lives in the same house as you. His name was David, and he was a musician. At first, he seemed distant. Distant means not friendly or not close. But little by little, we started talking. He told me about the challenges of being an artist. A challenge is a difficult situation, something that tests your ability. So, we talked about the challenges of being an artist. Living with others was not easy. Sometimes we disagreed about cleaning or noise. We did not have the same opinion. But it also taught me how to compromise. To compromise means to find a middle solution where both sides are happy. It was a new lesson in patience and communication. 1 month later, I started a part-time job at a language school. Part-time means not full-time. It means working only a few hours a week. I taught beginner English classes. At first, everything was going well. But one day, I made a big mistake. I gave my students the wrong exam paper. Many of them became confused. They did not understand what was happening. Some even felt upset and complained to the school manager. To complain means to tell someone that you are not happy about something. I felt deeply ashamed. I felt bad about myself because of my action. I wanted to hide and never go back. But my manager called me to her office. She said something important. Mistakes happen. What matters is how you respond. The word respond means how you act after something happens. I apologized to the class the next day. I said I was sorry. I explained my mistake. I gave them extra time to finish the test. Surprisingly, many students thanked me for being honest, for telling them the truth. That day, I learned that responsibility is not about being perfect. And responsibility means doing the right thing even when it is hard. Around the same time, something else changed in my life. Julia, the friend I met in cooking class, told me she was moving to another city for a new job. The news made me feel saddened. That means I felt unhappy and disappointed. We spent our last weekend together. We walked through the city. We talked about everything. She told me she was grateful for our friendship. That means she felt thankful. I told her I would miss her deeply. I would feel sad because she was not near me. When she left, my days felt emptier. Emptier means with less meaning or joy. I often thought about texting her but stopped myself because I did not want to bother her. I did not want to annoy or disturb her. It was the first time I truly understood how friendship shapes our lives, how it changes or influences our lives. But even though she was gone, her kindness and support stayed with me. They gave me strength when I felt lonely. They gave me strength when I felt sad. There was a period when I thought about giving up on everything. Life felt too heavy. It was too difficult. It was too hard to deal with. I had lost my home. I had made mistakes at work. And now my closest friend had left. I started thinking that maybe I was not strong enough for change. I was not able to handle difficult situations. I even thought about moving back to my hometown. Hometown means the place where you were born or grew up. One night, as I sat on my bed feeling hopeless, David knocked on my door. Hopeless means without hope or believing nothing will get better. He asked if I wanted to join him for a small concert at a local cafe. I said no at first, but he insisted. To insist means he asked strongly and did not give up. The music that night was soft and beautiful. It was very pleasing to hear and see. It reminded me that life still had moments of joy, even in dark times. I realized that doubt is a natural part of growth. It was normal and expected. Everyone feels lost sometimes. That does not mean we should stop moving forward. After that night, I decided to write a letter to myself. I wanted to remind myself of everything I had survived. Survived means continue to live or exist through difficulties. I wrote, "You are stronger than you think. You are more powerful and able. You have faced many problems, and you are still here. You are not failing. You are learning. Writing that letter made me feel calmer. It made me feel more relaxed and peaceful. It helped me see that progress is not always fast or visible. You cannot always see it. Visible means easy to see. Sometimes it is slow and silent. A few weeks later, something changed. I started to feel more confident in my teaching. I was more sure of myself and my abilities. I also began to make new friends at the language school. These friendships gave me a sense of belonging. That means a feeling that you are part of a group, a sense of belonging. I still missed my friend, but I also learned that people enter and leave our lives for a reason. Each person teaches us something and leaves a mark. They have an influence. They have an effect on our lives. I made a new promise to myself. I would keep trying, no matter how many times I failed. No matter how many times I did not succeed. I would keep moving forward, even if the road was slow. One afternoon, I was sitting in a small cafe near the school. I was drinking tea and writing in my notebook. Suddenly, a thought came to my mind. That means an idea or plan formed in my head. What if I started something on my own? Something small but meaningful. Something important and full of purpose. I had always enjoyed teaching English. I loved watching my students grow in confidence. I realized that I could create a space where people could learn and feel supported. Supported means helped and encouraged by others. The idea made me feel energized. It made me feel full of motivation and ready to act. I spent the rest of the day writing plans and goals. It was just a beginning, but it felt like the start of something exciting. The next week, I spent hours thinking about how my project could work. Project means a planned piece of work with a purpose. I wanted to build a free English club for people in the community who could not pay for classes. Community means the group of people living in the same area. I started by writing a simple proposal. That means a written plan or suggestion. I described my goals, the lessons I wanted to offer, and how I would run the club. To offer means to give or provide something to someone. Then, I talked to the manager of the language school and explained my plan. I was nervous. That means worried and unsure. But she listened carefully and smiled. She said, "This is a wonderful idea. We can give you a classroom once a week." Wonderful means very good or excellent. My heart filled with relief. Relief means a feeling of comfort after stress. It was actually going to happen. I was really happy. The first lesson was on a rainy Saturday. The first lesson was on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Only 4 people came, but they looked excited and ready to learn. Excited means happy and full of energy. I started by teaching simple conversations and useful daily phrases. I spoke slowly and repeated words many times. I also told them not to be afraid of mistakes. At first, the students were shy. That means quiet and uncomfortable speaking. But after a few minutes, they started talking and laughing. By the end of the class, they were speaking English more confidently. Confidently means in a strong and sure way. I walked home smiling. I felt a deep sense of purpose. I knew this was just a start, but I had a strong reason to do it. The English Club was growing in ways I had never imagined. Each week, more and more people came through the doors. They brought their stories, they brought their dreams, and they brought their hopes with them. Soon, the classroom we were using became overcrowded. That means there were too many people inside for the space to feel comfortable. When a room is overcrowded, it is difficult to move. It is difficult to speak or work properly. I spoke to the manager of the school about this challenge. A challenge is a situation that tests your ability and makes you work harder to solve it. Facing a challenge is not always bad. In fact, it often helps you grow. The manager listened carefully and agreed to give us a larger room with better equipment. Equipment refers to the tools and materials you need to do a task. In our case, it meant whiteboards, speakers, and projectors that could make our lessons more effective. I felt grateful. I felt thankful because better resources, better equipment meant better lessons and more learning for our students. The atmosphere of the club also became more collaborative. That means people were starting to work together and support one another. Collaboration is when many people combine their efforts to achieve a common goal. For example, some students stayed after class to help clean up or prepare materials for the next lesson. Others created small groups to study together during the week. This teamwork made the club feel like a real community, a place where people were not just learning English, but also building relationships. One evening, as I watched my students practicing conversation, an idea came to me. What if I organized an exhibition? An exhibition is an event where people show what they have created or learned. For example, art galleries hold exhibitions to present paintings to the public. Our exhibition would be an open day where students could invite their families and friends to see their progress. Planning the event needed organization. It included deciding on the date, arranging chairs and tables, preparing materials, and scheduling performances. At first, this planning felt overwhelming. That means it was too much to manage, and made me feel stressed. I stayed awake late at night. I was writing lists and checking details to make sure nothing went wrong. When the day of the event finally arrived, the room was full of excitement. It was full of anticipation. Anticipation means a strong feeling of looking forward to something. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen. Students gave short speeches, read stories they had written, and even acted out small scenes in English. Their families watched proudly and clapped loudly after each presentation. One morning, I opened my mailbox and saw a letter. It was from the Ministry of Education. They were planning a big conference on adult education. A conference is a large meeting where teachers and experts share ideas and experiences. They invited me to give a presentation about our English club. I was surprised when I read the letter. I felt excited, but also scared. Speaking to my class was one thing. Speaking to hundreds of people in a big hall was something completely different. But I knew I could not say no. This was a chance to share my story with many more people. I started to prepare for the presentation. A presentation is a talk you give to explain your ideas to an audience. I spent many evenings working on it. I collected photos of our classes. I wrote down stories from students. I organized information about how the club started and how it helped people. And I also practiced speaking again and again. I stood in front of a mirror and read my sentences out loud. The day of the conference arrived. My hands were shaking. They were trembling as I walked onto the stage. Hundreds of faces were looking at me. The lights were bright and the room was quiet. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I talked about our journey. I explained how language learning gave people confidence. I shared stories of students who had changed their lives. I spoke slowly and clearly, one idea at a time. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then everyone started clapping. The applause was loud and long. Applause is when people clap their hands to show respect and approval. As I stood there listening, I felt something special. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. Our small project had grown into something much bigger than I had ever imagined. When I think about my journey, what I remember most clearly are the people who walked beside me. Each person taught me something valuable. Some taught me about honesty, not just with others, but with myself. Honesty means telling the truth and not hiding your real feelings. Looking back, I see that my failures were some of my greatest teachers. At the time, they felt painful, but they helped me grow. Okay, thank you so much for listening today. I hope this long story has helped you practice English in a calm and meaningful way. Remember, The best way to learn a language is not only to study words, it is to live them through stories, ideas, and feelings. If you enjoyed this episode, please listen again and shadow the sentences slowly. Try to repeat the new words and think about their meaning in your own life. Every time you listen, your English will grow stronger and clear. And if this story helped you, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend who is also learning English. Until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and remember, you do not need perfect English. You need English that comes back when you need it. Bye for now.